Welcome to the Creative Brew, helping you keep your creative juices brewing. We're giving out chunks of insight, motivation, and practicality for your creative journey. If you're a creator, athlete, or entrepreneur, luck can only get you so far. Having the right skill sets are critical in your success. All Skill No Luck makes handcrafted, custom designed flannel wear, made in the United States and based here right in Oceanside, California. They pride themselves on quality, creativity, and attitude. The perfect brand for the Creative Brew. Use promo code CreativeBrew10 and get 10% off and free shipping within the United States. You can check them out at allskillnoluck.com. My next partner is Elevate Coffee Trading, and if you appreciate specialty coffee, enjoy outdoor adventure, and love helping elevate the lives of children around the world, then you're going to love Elevate Coffee Trading. Their mission is to extract hope through love, coffee, and adventures. There's free shipping in the United States, and every bag of coffee helps sponsor health and education for children in coffee-producing countries and in areas of need in the United States. You can use promo code Elevate21 on your next order, and you can follow their journey on social media at Elevate Coffee Trading. Or you can visit online at elevatecoffeetrading.com, and let's start extracting hope together. Hey, this show is brought to you by Tennessee Grappling Apparel, based out of the Knoxville area. Lifestyle wear for the modern wrestler or grappler. Use the promo code CB10 on your next purchase at TennesseeGrapplingApparel.com. Hey, and we're back with a new episode of the Creative Brew. Today, I'm giving you a compilation of my past guests, their creative tips, insights, and hopefully this gives you some value bombs, some knowledge, some practical things that you can use for your creative journey. If you do like it, let me know. Share, subscribe, comment. Everything helps. And as always, be creative, stay inspired. I've collected, hundreds of creative tips over the course of this show, but what is a creative tip or tips that you can provide for our audience?
A creative tip. I would say, man, I'm not a very creative person. I'm very passionate, but I wouldn't say I'm necessarily creative. But one of the things that I have learned in this season that I'm in right now is creativity is kind of sparked by perspective. So the more perspective I can have around me, the more creative I can be because I can see people's perspective. So one of the things that I would say for a creative tip is have a great team around you. I think creativity comes within the walls of a team with other creative people, with other people in general, because I wouldn't necessarily say I'm a creative person. But I believe when I get in the room with people that are creative, it sparks that in me. So I would say put people around you that are creative, and that's something that I do.
Some creative tips, for our audience.
Yeah, as far as tips, I think it's important to get exposure to whatever you have the means for. It does not have to be the craziest, software in the world. You don't have to jump out the gate into some of the the super high end stuff that's out. You can, if you have access to an iPad or heck, a phone, you can use, like stuff like Procreate, and just use if you only have a phone, you can use Procreate with their touch option where you can just paint with your finger on a phone. You can use Procreate on an iPad. That's a great introduction into getting into what I do in Photoshop and in Clip Studio. Affinity Designer is some great software as well. My main two software packages are Adobe is primarily what I do for all painting, and some line art. Clip Studio for line art. Procreate, I take that with me everywhere. Anytime I'm not, at home, I'll just take the iPad and I'll sketch in Procreate. Honestly, if you don't have means at all for anything digital, I think it's important just to grab some Bristol board. You can get that at any art store, or if you got Amazon, order some Strathmore Bristol board and some pencils. I personally use a 2H, 0.5 mechanical pencil for all my stuff, and some Pentel paint pens. That's what I use. Very easy to get access to get your start. As far as like gosh, there's so many different things. They're for like to learn how to do color theory and things like that. There's sites like Coolers. It's not colors. I think it's like a couple of O's and an LERS, something like that. You can definitely Google that. Yeah, if I can figure it out, I'll make sure to get that to you so you can add that to your notes. But that's a great way of just learning how to do quick color theory. Lighting, I study everything. I try to look at movies like The Third Man. That was a classic for black and white movie. How they did lighting in that film. The art director on Turtles, Simon Merton, made the entire team watch that movie end to end, back to back, multiple times, so we can kind of get an idea of what we're going to do on the turtle film, because he was like, that was the direction. So we all had to learn it. And I'm like, all right. And we watch this, and I'm like, holy cow, this movie's good. So I definitely recommend checking out as many things that can inspire you, from movies to games to comics. I do think if you're interested in getting into like stuff that was related to figures, if you have access to drawing and classes like for figure art, I think that's extremely important to kind of get the fundamentals of the anatomy down. Yeah, I definitely took those types of classes while I was in college, and in high school. I would try to take figure art classes, or before I could afford to do that, I grabbed magazines and just try to draw the form, and figure out ways to get a style around that. And then yeah, I mean, I think I with so many great avenues now with YouTube and whatever social media platform you use, it's kind of endless for how much you can kind of have access to. It's just kind of finding out the artists that you'd like to follow in their journey and that give you the most inspiration. I think, look at them, and then maybe every once in a while bring in a couple others to help level up what you do as an artist, because it's good to have exposure to a variety of art. You never know what might spark inspiration for what you do as a creative. So I tend to try to look at a variety of art from all ages and all techniques, if I can, when I can. It just keeps that excitement going, because I always I love watching what so many artists do around the world, and I'm lucky to be a part of it, but it's I want to stay a part of it. So I want to get better and show that I've got growth as well in this field too. So I think all those are important, but at the end of the day, it's most important thing is to have fun at it.
Is a creative tip or tips that you can provide for our audience?
Well, being curious as a journalist, you always have to be curious enough to know what's the story behind that, what's the backstory, how did that happen, or how long has that been there. And so I think being curious enough to learn about that and then share with other people, like, I have found that very interesting, I bet other people would too. And so having that confidence to say, I'm going to retell this story through my own voice, or through the use of photography or art or some sort of creative way to retell that story. And so now with social media, I mean, everyone can be a storyteller. And so we've seen so many great creative people emerge. The bottleneck or the filters are sort of removed. Now, you don't have to work as a journalist for a big TV station or a newspaper. Everyone can tell that story. And so for those inclined and want to be creative, I think knowing what tools to use, how to tell that story, being able to manage digital assets is always important, because you can be overwhelming with the cascade of different streams of photos and information, and how to package it up. It really is important, and promote it too. It's great if someone is a great artist or has a great photo collection, but in order to share that, you have to kind of have alliances who can also promote for you and speak on your behalf. So asking people, can you please share this, or can you please help me promote that? A lot of people are afraid of that, and a lot of people don't want to ask. But if you're a creative person, you have creative ideas and products and an exhibit or artwork or something to share, it's okay to ask people, will you help share this? Do you mind? Or I trust you enough that within your network, I would love to get your help to share this. And usually when people ask me, I'm very inclined to help because I want to promote other people too. People get bored with just, Amy's this, that. I want to share, like, you guys have to go see this, or you have to go to this show, or this is something you'll want to see. And so uplifting and inspiring those other people when you can get other people to talk about your work, it really means a lot. And speaking and advocating for other people up and coming, people who need that extra lift. And so if you can ever be that voice for someone else, it's kind of karma, it'll come around and support. And so I think that there's room for everyone. There's no limit on how much you can say or promote or share with other people about other people. And so when people trust you and count on you to advocate for them, that says a lot. So I like to share that and share the stories of other people as well, not just me or what I'm doing to promote, but how can I help the next generation or other people just starting, or really being a bullhorn for other people and getting out the word about things.
Going to creative tips. This is something I ask all my guests, and I've had probably more than 100 creative tips from various guests. But what's a creative tip or tips that you can provide our audience?
Well, as far as like social media goes, or
it could be life.
Okay.
It could be anything.
Okay. In life, I feel like I gave a couple of creative tips in life, like quick life hacks. For those who are like wanting to hop on like social media as far as like creating content and stuff, one of the biggest things that I've learned about social media is that you will get upset with God over a blessing that you're not even ready for. You know what I mean? And what I mean by that is that a lot of people always want to have a lot of likes. They want to have a lot of followers. I've had people reach out to me and say, how do I get more followers? How do I get more likes? How do I get more engagement? And the reality is that you gotta, before you worry about that, create something for a community that you are expecting to come. Because when you get the community and you don't have nothing to offer them, they're going to go to somebody else to get it anyway. You know what I mean? And nobody just want to follow you just for the sake of following you. Another creative tip that I would say is that don't ever think that just because everybody else is doing it, that you are exempt from being able to do it. And what I mean by that, people don't say like, oh, I don't want to create a podcast because everybody got a podcast. Yeah, everybody got a podcast, but everybody podcast ain't good. All right. I'll just be honest, I mean, we done heard a couple of podcasts now, like we done heard them, sitting back thinking like, damn, I can't even believe he aired this. But, that's, and a lot of times people will not take that step forward because they feel like the community already has enough of it. The community does not have enough of you. They do not have enough of you because you are the only one that's going to be able to tell that story in the way that it's supposed to. When I stepped into self-help, that self-help realm, I mean, it's a plethora of podcasts about it. You know what I mean? But I'm the only one that's going to be able to tell it from my point of view. So I step forward with it. You know what I mean? And I think that was one of the biggest things that really helped me with the situation. And I think my last creative tip, and I hope these are creative tips. Like I hope this would help.
This is awesome.
Strangers and supporters, your biggest supporters are going to be complete strangers.
Yep.
Your biggest supporters is going to be complete strangers. If I take something right now from Instagram, post it on Facebook, I guarantee you that thing will probably get like 10 likes, 2 views. I guarantee you that. And the crazy part is that on Facebook, that's where all my family and friends are. That's where all my family and friends. And I'm talking about like people that know me since I was a kid. But I take that exact same thing, drop it on Instagram, and it'll go all over the place. And the reality, and I want people to understand this, is that we get upset with our family and friends because we think that they're going to be the first ones in lines to support us. But the reality is that sometimes our family and friends ain't our target audience. Yeah. Sometimes our family and friends can't wrap their head around the idea that you are that person now, that you're not the person that they used to know. Yeah, is it cool to have somebody support you? But the reality is that you should be the first person supporting you. They'll come later, but make it for the person who has never met you a day in their life and they are now hearing you. And then I'm telling you, like some of my biggest supporters are like I've never even met these people. Like I never met them, and I grew to meet them later on.
Yeah. All that. Creative tips. What
Yeah.
is a creative tip or tips that you can provide our audience?
So I did think about this one because I feel like, I could go on probably a lengthy sentence here,
Yeah.
but I would say build your creative action plan,
I like that.
right? And it's not just pertaining to creativity. Now, I think it's an overall, advice that you can be creative even if you're not a creative,
Mm-hmm.
and you can have a plan and believe in that plan, make it real, make those action steps and keep going. You don't have to have the creativity to really be successful as an entrepreneur, as a small business owner. You could find ways to learn how to be more creative or learn to really grow with self development. So you can find that all by creating that creative action plan.
Oh, that's cool. Is that something you offer your clients?
In a way, yeah.
Okay. All right. I've
But
actually
I
been trying to
don't.
work on my action plan.
Oh, okay.
So,
Yeah. I mean,
we
I
may.
do.
Okay.
Yeah. So that is a real thing, but I call it a little differently.
Yeah.
More marketing strategy plan. But yeah, I definitely offer services that cater to that.
Cool.
But, yeah.
Good deal. Um, so right now, I mean, creative tips, and this is something that I ask all of my guests on the show. What is a creative tip or tips that you can provide with our audience?
Let's see. One thing that I always say is make sure that the room where you create in is as beautiful as you can make it, and just I'll give you an example. On my desk here, it's silly, but it's like I found this little antique kind of like little vase thing, right?
Yeah.
And then I just found little dry flowers around the place and I kind of put them in, and that's something that, yeah, it's silly, but it's another little element of creative beauty that I get to look at when I'm in the creative process. But if I really think about it, another thing that I would want to mention as a creative tip, for a long period of my life, I considered myself as a jazz trumpeter and a jazz singer. And that's because I studied jazz at university. And so I put those walls around my creativity. That's what I do. It wasn't until I decided to say, hang on, no, I'm not necessarily just a jazz trumpeter and singer. I'm also, I also do a podcast and that's creative. And I do this and that's creative. I do that. Or I'm interested in this. I'm interested in that. I started to break down those barriers and say, no, okay, let's categorize myself as a creative individual and let's see where that takes me.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I started doing that I picked up the piano, again, when I hadn't really been focusing on it at all. And that ended up creating an album on piano and then now learning didgeridoo and then writing poetry. And, I discovered so much more in the kind of the well of creativity within me when I decided to drop those labels that were kind of holding me in a certain box. Creativity by definition goes outside of the boxes, and you need, as a creative person, to have some sort of structure because otherwise you'll go insane. But you also need to recognize that your job is to teach people how to see and experience something different, and you need to do that as well if you're going to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, drop those labels and try and explore your own creative pursuits, even if it means going somewhere that you haven't gone.
Creative tips. What is a creative tip or tips that you can provide our audience?
Follow the breadcrumb trail. I think from the seat that I have, I guess I want everybody to be more engaged with how they feed themselves. It does not have to be upscale, fabulous French cuisine. It can be as simple as making an awesome grilled cheese sandwich. But just getting a little bit more in tune and in touch with nourishing ourselves will directly impact kind of the rest of your life. So I think in creative terms, finding the things that I feel like it's so easy to say and so hard to do, but finding the things that give you fulfillment are what make the difference in a life well lived. And so having the tenacity to say no to the things that aren't fulfilling you and say yes to the things that are, whether it's like whatever you're cooking for yourself or your actual career move, that's that's what's going to bring a little bit more light to anybody's life, is trying to pursue the things that bring fulfillment. And I use that word a lot because I love that there's two, I have full and fill in the middle of it. So like I mean, it's like destined to be my word. But fulfillment, real, true, actual reward that gives back to you in a meaningful way. It makes you get excited to get out of bed. And perhaps, and I'm gonna go, I feel like my mom when I talk like this, but I really believe that all of us have a very deep-seated mission to leave the world a little better than we found it. And it could be the tiniest little blip of anything. But I believe that if you can do that, then you've achieved what you were set on earth to do, right? If you can just leave it a little better, whatever that looks like. And I think if you pursue those sorts of missions and goals, your creativity can just blossom, because then it stops being just about you and it's about something bigger, right?
I've been thinking about this, and I was like, man, should I bring up something new? And I was, when I got the list of questions for me, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stick with what exactly I told you guys last time, because I truly believe if you dive into being consistent and being consistent in your preparation is so important. And this goes for business people, this goes for any walk of life, and especially athletes. Um, for me, for a long time, I got laughed at by my wife because of the things that I would do to prepare myself for the next day, whether it was set out my clothes, whether it was set out my bowl with my oatmeal, with my spoon, with my banana, with my coffee next to it, with my coffee already done. Everything is in place. My supplements were right there. My journal and my devotional is right there. Everything is in place. So when that alarm clock goes off, I get up, and there is zero panic on where's my clothes, where's my supplements, where's my food, where's my journal. It's done. It's get up, brush your teeth, get your butt downstairs, and get going. And that for me it's almost like therapy for me. When I come home, I'm like super excited, try to be super excited for my kids, and when dad's home, it's all about them. And but when I get that moment to prepare for the next day, I go all in, man. I go all in on making sure that it is dialed in on every aspect. Like I said, so when that goes off, it's being the best version of John Reeder I could be that day, and lift up those around me. And that little thing, whether it's setting my food out or setting my clothes out, for me, that helps me. And I truly believe if you can figure out some sort of routine the night before, I'm not talking about the morning of. Yes, your morning routine will naturally come to form, but it starts the night before. And I challenge you to be all in on that. I challenge you to figure out what you need for the next day to be the best version of yourself. And I challenge you to do that daily. And if you can do that daily, and I promise you, there's going to be some positive that comes out of that. There's going to be a little bit less stress on for you the next morning. You're going to be a little bit more laser focused that next morning. Um, and naturally, like I said, the next morning it's all about efficiency for me, and how do I set myself up and get ready to rock and roll.
Great tip. What is a creative tip or tips for our audience?
The best creative tip that I could give somebody would be extinguish all rules, right? When you are in that moment of creativity, allow all those feelings and thoughts to happen and then set them aside and get to work, because it's in that moment that those things will, more times than not, become the barrier between expressing oneself and being afraid to, because there's rules or there's, you know, preconceived notions about the way things should or shouldn't be done. And I would say just put all that to the side for the sake of doing and creating what you feel and see what comes from that. And I think that that for me has been, you know, this idea of just existing in the art world without rules is amazing. And I, you know, and take, if you want to, take classes. Once you've experienced that, you know, as an artist, I'm a lifelong learner now of art, and I take watercolor classes. But I still approach, you know, there's days where, okay, I know some of the rules now, and I still throw them out the window for the sake of, yeah, but I want to do this, you know? And so I think that it's good on one hand to gain instruction if you need that and you like that kind of support, and you want to learn a new skill. But ultimately, when it comes down to it, you know, it's okay to put all those rules aside.
That's
That
great.
would be my.
What is a creative tip or tips that you can provide our audience? This can pertain to theater, creativity, life, doesn't matter. I consider all of it art. What is a creative, what's a creative tip?
I think my number one thing is just don't be afraid to ask questions. I think a lot of people worry about, oh, are they going to be angry or bothered by me or annoyed if I ask this one question one more time? Like people like me, for example, I'm put in a position to give opportunity and to teach the future people coming in. Like if I have knowledge to give, I will give it. If you have to ask me 14 times, ask me 15 times, just to be sure. You know, I think questions are how things get answered, obviously, but don't realize that like you have to experience it hands-on with also asking, how do I do this? And is it okay if I do this? Or what can I do to do this? You know, I think so. Yeah, I think that's my biggest tip. Another one would probably be just to, again, go back to the beginning of our conversation. Don't be afraid to take a risk, because I think we're in the world now of the idea of creativity is just booming. Everyone's coming out with ideas. Not all of them are successful, obviously, but risks and taking risks and thinking of ideas and not being afraid to act on those ideas is how new things get created. And I think we're in a creation vibe in the world right now, and it's something that we can definitely add on to. So those two.
Hey, I hope you liked this little compilation of creative tips. Special thanks to all the guests that's been able to be on the show for these past episodes. And as always, you know, if you want to connect with me, you can check me out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and as always, be creative, stay inspired.